Oh, well, good morning. Happy Wednesday. It is Wednesday, the 18th of March, and we are halfway through March and a quarter way almost through the whole entire year, and it's just crazy. As my wife says, the days are long, but the years are short, and this is perfect evidence of that. Beautiful day out this morning. Hope you get a chance to just enjoy the beautiful day. I was outside a little bit yesterday, and it is getting warmer, but it is beautiful. And this is definitely the great time of year to be in Arizona as opposed to Minneapolis, where it was snowing, and Chicago, where it was snowing, and Alaska, where it's always cold, Antarctica. Let's see. Thank you so much for joining me. We have one birthday today, Carrie Kaczynski. Happy birthday, Carrie. May God richly bless you today. And just a couple housekeeping rules. Today, we're going to go through Deuteronomy, and then tomorrow we'll go through our red letter challenge, and then we'll do the same thing next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Deuteronomy. Thursday will be the red letter challenge, and then we have Easter week, and then the following week would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Deuteronomy, and then Thursday after Easter. No, I'm sorry. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after Easter is we're off, but the Thursday after Easter we're going to wrap up, and I think I'm going to be able to do it. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do it, but we're going to figure out a way to, because I'll be gone on a field trip with the junior high kids. We're going to Cottonwood, Arizona, of all places. Cottonwood, Arizona. Interesting fact, near Cottonwood, Arizona is Cornville, Arizona. And my grandparents had a trailer right off of the river in Cornville, Arizona. And I used to play, and there's a kid. I'd go down to the river and pond or the stream and pick up frogs and all sorts of critters. But every time it would rain, it would flood that whole entire area. And their trailer got flooded out a couple times, and they finally said, yeah, we're done with this. So they sold the property and the trailer and everything. But as a for a period of time, it was one of the coolest places to spend time with my grandparents, for sure. I would say I was probably 6 through 10, maybe 6 through 9, something like that, when I kind of remember spending time up there in Cottonwood, Arizona. I'm sorry, not Cottonwood, Cornville, Arizona. All right, and I remember the next door neighbors were the Jacksons, and this is going to sound crazy, but one time Jennifer and I were taking a drive up to northern Arizona. This is before we were married, I think, and before we had kids. I had a 66 Ford Fairlane convertible, so I like to go driving with the top down and just drive. And we ended up in Cornville, Arizona, and the sign out front of this house said Jackson's. And I'm like, oh, I remember as a kid, we stopped and knocked on the door. They looked at me like I was crazy, if I remember correctly. Anyway, all right, let's get into our study. We are in Deuteronomy chapter 19, and let's just start reading in verse 1. When the Lord your God has destroyed the nations whose land he is giving you, and when you have driven them out and settled in their towns and houses, then set aside for yourselves 3 cities in the land the Lord your God is giving you to possess. Determine the distances involved and divide into 3 parts the land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, so that a person who kills someone may flee for refuge to one of these cities. This is the rule concerning anyone who kills a person and flees there for safety. Anyone who kills a neighbor unintentionally, without malice aforethought. For instance, a man may go into the forest with his neighbor to cut wood, and as he swings his axe to fell a tree, the head may fly off and hit his neighbor and kill him. That man may flee to one of the cities and save his life. Otherwise, the avenger of blood might pursue him in a rage, overtake him if the distance is too great, and kill him, even though he is not deserving of death, since he did it to his neighbor without malice aforethought. And this is why I command you to set aside for yourself 3 cities. If the Lord your God enlarges your territory as he promised on oath to your ancestors and gives you the whole land he promised them, because you carefully follow all these laws I command you today, to love the Lord your God and to walk in always in obedience to him, then you are to set aside 3 more cities. Do this so that innocent blood will not be shed in your land, which the Lord your God is giving you as your inheritance, so that you will not be guilty of bloodshed. But if out of hate someone lies in wait, assaults and kills a neighbor, and then flees to one of these cities, the killers shall be sent for by the town elders, be brought back from the city, and be handed over to the avenger of blood to die. Show no pity. You must purge from Israel the guilt of shedding innocent blood, so that it may go well with you. Do not move your neighbor's boundary stones set up by your predecessors in the inheritance you receive in the land the Lord your God is giving you to possess. So a lot of things here. First of all, the idea of a sanctuary city is from God. If you kill somebody unintentionally, which happens, today we call that manslaughter. If this happens, then the person who does it may flee to a refuge city. There are 3 of them spaced apart so you can get there before your pursuer reaches you. And once you're in the sanctuary city, the pursuer cannot come in and grab you because it was unintentional accident. But if it was intentional, if it was malice, forethought, premeditated, as we would call it, premeditated murder, first, second, or third degree, and different levels of premeditation, then they can come in and grab you. I believe that. Now, one of the interesting thing is that the person who dies is still dead, regardless whether or not it's manslaughter or first, second, or third degree murder. It's the same person is dead. The question is, the family is still going to suffer from that. If your dad or mother or brother or sister or spouse dies on accident, that's one thing. If they die because somebody premeditated murder, then they're still dead no matter what, and the pain of losing that person is real. But I think if it's somebody I don't have anybody in my family that was murdered. But so it's hard for me to speak. But based upon people who I've talked to that have lost loved ones that are murdered, there's a deep sense of you want revenge. There's a deep. I mean, who are you going to? If somebody dies in a car accident, who are you going to? I mean, it was an accident for sure. I mean, who are you going to revenge against? But if a person intentionally kills that person, there is a sense of justice, revenge, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. It's part of human nature, and this is something we want. Just for our own peace of mind, we want to make sure. I think that our mind is calmed in that sense. I mean, either way, they're dead. But I think if it's a premeditated murder, there's an additional feeling besides the loss of grief of somebody, or the grief from the loss of somebody. I think there's also this element of trying to get retribution that also has to be dealt with, and I think in Christianity, we try to, through the teachings of Jesus, we try to quelch feelings of retribution. I think that's what Jesus encourages us to get to that point, but I don't know if it's possible. And so this is the distinction, I guess. The person's still dead, but the people who are surviving that person, how do they deal with the death? So they can go to a sanctuary city. There were 3 on the east side, 3 on the west side of the Jordan River. I think I got a list of them here. On the west of the Jordan River, that's Kedesh in Galilee, Shechem and Hebron. And then east of the Jordan is Bezer, Ramoth, and Golan. So those were some of the cities that were mentioned in the book of Joshua. And if you unintentionally kill somebody, like the head of an axe comes and they kill, then dead, then you run quickly to the sanctuary city. I don't know how they knew, like if you're in pursuit of somebody, I guess maybe you take the witnesses with you to show that they saw that it was a premeditated. You can't take somebody's life if it's only one person. It takes 3 witnesses. So I guess if you're in the Old Testament, you wanted to kill somebody, you had to make sure that nobody's around to watch you. Because if they saw you, then and there was more than one witness, then they can take your life. Otherwise, you could say, well, this was an accident. And then, of course, today, which is all based upon the Old Testament laws, Western society is based upon this idea of sanctuary city, trying to find out if it's premeditated or not premeditated. All this goes back to the Old Testament, the Judeo-Christian Western society. And we have, that's why we have manslaughter and non-manslaughter murder, because it goes back to here. But if you kill somebody and it's intentional and somebody sees you and you go to a sanctuary city, I'm sorry, but there is nothing that can be done. I mean, you're going to go back and you're going to pay your punishment, pay your crime. I do wonder if a person is killed intentionally, if the family can beg for mercy and justice and get it. It's I'm sorry, beg for mercy instead of justice and get it. Good question. And then don't move your neighbor's boundary stone. That's believe it or not, a period of time in my life, I was a land surveyor, and some of these boundary stones are very, very important, and they were set when the Gadsden Purchase came in, or any of the Western expansion came in. They set up a system of townships and ranges. A township is 6 miles by 6 miles square, so 36 square miles, and in each square mile is 640 acres, and the whole entire Western expansion, they would go and survey the whole entire land, and then they'd put in the property boundary, and that property boundary is never ever moved, even if it was done in error. That property boundary is never moved. And I remember one time we were surveying in a major street, like 7th Avenue or 7th Street in Phoenix. This is when I was in high school. And typically these property markers back then were underneath the pavement, and you'd have a manhole. So you would open up the manhole and look down, and you'd find the original, and some of these original property markers were a chisel in a stone or a hole in a stone that was placed when it was originally set years and years and years ago. And so you'd open up the manhole, and there would be the property marker, this boundary stone. It was typically a section corner. A section corner is a very, very, very important property marker for land surveying. Anymore, they don't do that. What they'll do is they'll create ties, like a 5-foot offset or a 3-foot offset to that, and put 2 or 3 or 4 of them. And then they would come in, fill it with pavement, and they would put a brass cap in concrete, which is a little bit more stable than a stone. I mean, a stone is fairly stable, but they were going, at one point, they were replacing all those things with brass caps in concrete. But I remember finding, and especially when we're surveying up in northern Arizona, there's a contract with the power company, and every time land would go from public land to private land, they had to have the easement. There was a blanket easement if it's public land, but when it went private, you had to create a new easement for the utilities. And so we would have to do a survey around a section of land, and we would find some of these old markers. I mean, it was probably the coolest job I ever had in my life, was finding some of these old markers. and and so you'd measure, around the section and find out what the true distance is, and then where's the center line of the power, and then you'd have a 20-foot easement on each side or something like that. And you draw it up, and then I was also a CAD. I was also what did we call ourselves back then? Anyway, I would draw it up and ink on Mylar, and then we'd file it with the county. Pretty cool. All right. So I like the idea of not moving boundary markers. And I didn't know back then that there was actually in Deuteronomy not to move a boundary marker. But that's a major, major offense to move a boundary marker. Remove it or move it is a major offense. All right. Verse 15. One witness is not enough to convict anyone accused of a crime or offense they may have committed. A matter must be established in the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If a malicious witness takes the stand to accuse someone of a crime, the 2 people involved in the dispute must stand in the presence of the Lord before the priests and the judges who are in office at the time. The judges must make a thorough investigation, and if the witness proves to be a liar, giving false testimony against a fellow Israelite, then do to the false witness as that witness intended to do to the other party. You must purge the evil from among you. The rest of the people will hear of this and be afraid, and never again will such an evil thing be done among you. Show no pity, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. CSI Jerusalem, right? This is where it begins. Oh my goodness. One witness is not enough. So you have to have a testimony of witnesses. If they disagree, then somebody has to do an investigation to figure out what the heck happened. And then at the end of the investigation, I'm sure that the investigator presents the findings, and then the judge has to decide whether or not this person is lying or that person is lying. And it all goes down to character. Who is more likely to lie? Who has a stand-up character and has always had a stand-up character, and who has always lied? I don't know if that is brought into the courtroom, the character of the witness, but I think it is. I've never been on a trial. Believe it or not, I've never been called to be on a trial. I've never been called a jury summons. I've never gotten one, except 2 weeks ago I got one, my very first one ever. So sometime in May 5th, I think it is. Yeah, Cinco de Mayo. I'm going to go and figure out and serve on a jury. I've never done that before, so that'll be interesting. This idea of bearing false witness actually is one of the 10 commandments. If you'll remember, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Because by bearing false witness, you could have that person thrown into prison or killed, most likely killed. What would happen over time is that Israel would become so corrupt that there would be people who had power, and they would bribe witnesses, and they would bribe the judge, and they'd bribe everybody. And the poor soul that's sitting in the witness box would have all this stuff come against him, and he might lose his fortune, or he might lose what little he had. And this was very, very common in Israel. It's not what God wanted, and obviously it's not equitable, it's not right, it's not just. But what happens is some people can't be satisfied with what they have, and they always want to grab whatever they can. And this is not good. Our whole entire society, once society starts to descend into people lying and cheating and stealing, and that becomes the norm, then everybody does it. Because if you don't, you will people will bear false witness against you and take everything you own. And so this is why this type of behavior is societal. It's not individuals, which is why society has to uphold the law to the best of their ability, and they can't let people get away with with breaking the law. We have to have a high standard, and we have to teach that high standard. And if we don't do that, the society falls apart. The question is, on what authority do we teach this high standard? And for years and years and years in Western society, it was, well, because God said. Because if we don't follow this, then God is going to be angry and punish us. Or, there is a higher standard that we all have to live because God wants us to live to this higher standard. But what happens, is that this isn't taught, or if you take God out of the whole society, then on what basis are you teaching all these things? And we say, well, it's the Constitution. The Constitution says we should not do all these things. The laws of our land says we should not do these things. And there are people who say, well, I don't believe, that there's any, if I don't get caught doing it, then it's really it's no big deal. And I mean, this is the heart of the matter, is why should you follow the laws of the land? And if the answer is, well, because if I get caught, I'm going to put into prison, then you can do things and not get caught. But if the answer is because God says I should not do this and I will be punished, he will be angry at me because I do these things, that's a different standard. And this is why in the Middle Ages, coming out of the Middle Ages, a theocracy, not a theocracy, but a Western Europe following God, the church and state were linked together to make sure that the laws were followed. But once you separated that, it did create, here in the United States, it did create a different way of living, and it requires a different way to encourage people to follow the law. And I'm not sure that our society has really figured out how to do that very well. And this is why I think a Christian education, inculcated into a regular standard education is such a great thing, because the two can be linked back together again, and you produce people who follow the law because God wants them to, and as opposed to because if they get caught, they're going to get put into prison. I think this is the one thing I probably think about quite a bit is because I went to both public and private school, and I found that Christian school was just so incredibly wonderful. And I felt that there was something taught that I had not really heard before. My parents didn't even really teach it to me. They taught other things to me, which I'm grateful. But this idea that God demands that you live well, that you follow the law, even if you don't get caught, was something that was refreshing and important and powerful in my life. Anyway, because I was a sneaky kid, I did a lot of things because I knew I would never get caught, and that was not good. That was not good in my life. All right, so let's see. Are we done with chapter 19? Yes, we are. Yeah. So follow God's law, whether or not somebody's looking or not, whether or not you get caught or not. That's an important part of life. And it is in Western culture too. But without the threat of God seeing you, I don't know how you enforce it. Yeah. All right. Well, let's close in prayer. Gracious God, thank you for this day, and watch over us till we meet again. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, let me, I haven't even seen over here. Let me just look. Thank you all for joining me online. Glad to see you online. Pray all is going well. And we'll get together tomorrow for Red Letter Challenge. So make sure you read. I think we'll be doing week. What it is? Yeah, the next week. The next week. Whatever it is. Just keep up with the readings. All right, and we'll see you tomorrow. God's blessings. Bye.